Thank you. Thank you for the follow and welcome. But without further ado, let's move into the game that is It Takes Two. And I think that loads of you will probably know what this game is about. Loads of you have seen other streamers play it. Loads of you have heard about it. But if you didn't, it is a story about two parents that decided to go for a divorce, and they have a daughter, and this daughter obviously doesn't want them to divorce, and she's very very sad about it, but not sort of like inconsolable sad, but she has this kind of sadness that she tries to put into productivity. And one of these productive things that she does is that she creates dolls of her parents, and she reads a book called Dr. Hakim's Book of Love or something like that. Yeah, Dr. Hakim's Book of Love, and tries to help the relationship, help their parents, get back. You didn't like the ending. Oh, interesting. Well, we will get to the ending for sure. By the way, this is a spoiler warning for everyone that doesn't want to hear the ending, but I think it'll take us at least an hour until we get there. There are lots of chapters and lots of things to get through. But it's interesting that you say that. We will get there for sure, but I don't want to jump forward too much. I just want to outline the plot. Essentially, the girl asks, her name is Rose. Rose asks, and I didn't like the book. Oh yeah, I don't think anybody liked the book. Rose is crying over the book, and she asks it why, let my parents be together. And as she cries and holds the dolls of her parents as well, the tears sort of pop onto the dolls, and blah blah blah. Magic happens, and the souls of these parents are transformed into the dolls, and the dolls now have to complete basically the game, several levels, starting in the shed where these dolls where these dolls started, in the hands of Rose, getting all the way back to Rose's room, going through garden and tree and these different kind of levels, because it still has to be video gamey, but essentially going through these levels to be able to return back to their bodies. But they're kind of aided a little bit, but at the end also given obstacles by this book, that it becomes anthropomorphic, much like many other things around them. Anthropomorphic meaning that it's an inanimate object that displays human qualities, meaning that a book that can talk and dance and has eyes and stuff like that, vacuum cleaner that does the same thing and stuff like that. And the book's main mission, as it was given by Rose, is to put these parents back together, and the book essentially has that power over them that they need to complete the book's quests in order to return back to their bodies. But the book gives them these quests with the express purpose of these parents getting back together. And that is essentially the outline of what is going on. That's what the story is about, right? But the story is, as I said, separated into several levels, and these levels, as well as having the video game purpose, have some sort of story development purpose. Now, I did have a little bit of an issue looking for pictures. By the way, if you're new here, these pictures that I have here are meant to illustrate what I'm talking about, just so it isn't, just so you have something to look at it, something to imagine the story by, have a little bit of an illustration to what I'm talking about. And it's really difficult to find the right pictures for a video game, honestly, when I'm talking about the story rather than the gameplay. So, pardon me a little bit. But before we actually get into the nitty-gritty stuff, I just want to say something really quickly. The director that directed this is called Joseph Fares, and he has experience with games like that, or games like this, which are essentially co-op games where the person plays on, or the people play together as friends, and they try to, and this multiplayer is essentially on like a split screen kind of gameplay. Ferris also describes this story or this game as a romantic comedy, and like it is assumed, I think, that marriage in this sense is somewhat like a co-op game. But without further ado, we can get right into it. As I said, the parents are divorcing. Rose, their daughter. The parents' names, by the way, are Cody for the dad, and May for the mom. And Rose is the daughter. The idea of Rose is it's not her idea to have them jailed in these bodies, in these dolls. She just, has this wish to the heavens, and the heavens obviously heard her and transformed the parents. It is assumed that the marriage is a romantic comedy. Is that is that what I said? I meant the game. Oh my god. This is why I drink tea, Oh, okay, good. You're just you're just joking around, right? Okay, good. I thought that I said yeah. Marriage can be romantic comedy. I thought that I said something like that. No. Alright, good. Alright. Getting a little bit warm here with the tea, at least. But anyway, it's a tremendous game for marriage counseling, that's for sure. You bait on point with everything you say. You mean I've been on point with everything I say? If so, oh yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. By the way, Gus came back, or rather, maybe he was here just lurking, which is fine. Tremendous game for marriage counseling. Have you played it, Gus? Oh, excuse me, I'm about to go. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, but I just... I didn't want to say it out loud. I just want to suggest to you, Anna's here. Maybe say hello. So you haven't greeted her in an hour or something. I haven't played, but I have watched Wiggles play it. Yeah, I mean that's what I thought while playing it, as well. Or rather, watching it. I didn't actually play it. That's actually a good thing to say up front. I don't really have the time to play it. I mean, it's like a nearly 15-hour game, so I don't really have the time to play it. Nor, sadly, I don't really have anybody else to play it with, so I didn't really go for it. I was interested in it more as a story perspective, so what I did, I watched playthroughs of the game. If you're interested, I watched the playthrough of fellow Twitch streamers, Hafu and Disguised Toast. Oh yeah, forever for him to unrest. Yeah. I can imagine that completely. But anyway, getting back to the story. We start in the shed where these dolls come to life. And it's essentially like you immediately are thrown into their world. And what is interesting, in my opinion, is that from the realistic kind of animation of the parents and like the real stakes of like divorce and the like child crying and everything, like absolutely like completely stone cold real sadness that begins in this, that sort of starts this game up. We are suddenly transported into this doll world, and that's sort of how I call it, where it clearly is like a comedy. It clearly is like geared towards children as well. So it's kind of a romantic comedy, but at the same time, like child-friendly, like very, very family-friendly. The jokes that are there are bordering cringy to being perhaps too childish, but at the same time, they do have like real weight, and some of the dialogue like very clearly shows that it is for adults very much as well. You watched them, nice. Anna, did you mean Gus? Or did you mean me? But anyway, carrying on. So we are in this doll world. And immediately. Hafu and Toast. Yeah. I watched them. They're great, especially Hafu. Like I got really into. Okay, this is a bit of a side note, but as we're talking about it, I actually like one of the first streamers that I watched regularly was Hafu, actually, when she played Among Us, especially in October of last year. I watched her Among Us episodes pretty much every day, or Among Us streams rather, pretty much every day. So like the Hafu lobbies are a big part of why I'm streaming. Not the biggest, but it is a part. And this guy's Toast as well. Otherwise, I'm more of a YouTube kind of person. Hafu's lobbies are the best. Oh yeah, I'm glad to to have met a fellow Hafu fan, or a Hafu lobby fan at least. I'm also someone who got into Twitch because of Among Us. Yeah, I mean, Among Us clearly had a huge effect. It's a nice fun fact about you. Oh yeah, I can imagine that. More Ludwig, Saikuno, Jacksepticeye. Of course, I watched all of them, absolutely. Yeah, Jacksepticeye, I think I watched Jacksepticeye for at least like 5 years or something like that. When the first Subnautica game, like, I watched him when Subnautica was in early release. That's yeah. Yeah, on YouTube, yeah, exactly. And I'm much more of like a YouTube kind of kid than a Twitch kid. Yeah, Subnautica playthroughs. Amazing. And yeah, Saikuno and everyone. I mean, I when I got into it, I watched like loads of people in the Hafu lobbies, and then of course Valkyrie Racer lobbies as well. Sam, him, RT, and Kevin were my YouTubers for years. Oh yeah, like they have great energy. Like especially when they play with each other. I don't know if you've seen the video. Oh my god, am I literally just I'm literally just advertising other streamers. Yes, okay, let's get back into it for a little bit. I'm glad we have reconnected on this level. We can talk about it further, of course, but we have we do have a video game to review here, so let's review that for a little bit at least, okay? Anyway, we ended up in a world of dolls. Let's show them off, shall we? Yes. in this world of dolls, they obviously are like shocked that these human beings, these human souls, are suddenly transported into the souls, but they don't really have time to discuss that too much because the book appears, and I don't know if I actually managed to. Well, you kind of see it, like there to the left of the screen, there to the left of the image, you see the anthropomorphic book, and I've been writing notes while looking at the playthroughs, and my first note for the book is, why is the book Mexican? And why is he so cringy? I wrote that literally while watching the playthrough. It was kind of shocking. I did not expect, yeah, cause love. Yeah, I mean there is amor, corazon. Yeah, I get it. Like obviously there is this connection, you know, Antonio Banderas and like these kind of like, you know, these Spanish, rather either Spanish or Latin American or Mexican kind of. Being more attuned to like passions rather than the more reserved conservative people in the north, like the English or Czechs or something, you know. So obviously yes, not approved by me. Yeah. I'm also not convinced by that, honestly. I felt like making him Mexican just raises too many questions. By the way, I don't know if he's Mexican. Obviously, he can be Spanish or any other like denomination. He has a Spanish accent, but at the same time, like the reason why I imagined it would be Mexican is because it's an American game, or at least it seems to be an American story. So, you know, that's why Mexican rather than Spanish came to mind. But, now we are getting a little bit further into the story with a vacuum. Since we've put the vacuum on the screen, might as well talk about it. This vacuum, I think, is more important to the story than people realize when they're just playing the game or having the gameplay, because or watching a gameplay, because essentially what it does really well, this entire game, is sometimes it manages to outline the conflicts in the game or in the entire story in a very subtle and nice way. So like the vacuum, for example, Cody says, oh yeah, sorry, whereas I actually had a note about this. Yeah, a broken vacuum establishes the main conflict. Essentially, May always works, so she doesn't really have time to fix the vacuum. So she tells it to Cody, but Cody is reckless and doesn't really, maybe not reckless, but he isn't the kind of like fixing fixing responsible time. He's slightly irresponsible, while May doesn't have time for the family. And this is shown on the vacuum, because usually it would be May that fixes these things, or at least it is outlined for us there that May is the fixer in the family, that she would fix that. But she told that Cody should do it, but Cody, you know, either was too irresponsible to remember that, or he just forgot, or he just decided not to do it because he didn't believe in himself that much. And this simple thing already establishes the main conflict, which I like very much. DB, you've got to go. I'll be back later if you're still alive. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I hope you'll return. And Gus, I'm gonna lurk for now. I shall check this VOD out for sure. No worries, mate. I'm glad you you blessed us with your presence. Thank you very much. But we carry on. So you have this conflict set up, right? There you already see that the therapy is somewhat starting. That you're starting to identify the issues with Cody, and you're starting to identify the issues with May. And then you have like this area of the shed, which somewhat like eases you into the gameplay mechanics, and that's something that I'll talk about throughout this whole review as well. Is that there is a difference between video game and story, obviously, and the hard part is like combining the gameplay and the story, and that's something that I feel loads of stories tend to struggle with. That's loads of video games tend to struggle with, because you want to have an interesting, entertaining gameplay that's you know, can stand on its own pretty much, because it's video game first and foremost, right? And at the same time, like, is understandable and easy to use and easy to like understand. But like if it tears too much into the story, then you know, the story becomes stale, or it becomes uninteresting, or it becomes like not subtle enough, stuff like that. You know, there's this like difficult balance that you have to achieve with that. But this start, we start in the shed, where these dolls suddenly come to life, or rather the human souls of the parents get into these souls, and you are eased into the game in a sense that you understand the mechanics, you understand that there is a split screen, as you can see, and you have a perspective of the player that's playing May and the player that's playing Cody, and you understand that there is a level of cooperation, right, that, you know, you both can carry the fuses to this fuse box, for example, and you're starting to like realize what the game is about. But at the same time, the story progresses forward in a sense that you see that they now need to work together in order to achieve a goal. They were fighting at the beginning because May was trying to blame Cody, and Cody was kind of blaming May for starting or for like becoming these dolls somehow. But now they have a common goal that they have to reach together. But as they carry on through the shed. They talk to this lady binoculars. I don't have a picture there, and you know, she tells them, listen, I've seen Rose, your daughter, crying here in the shed. So the parents are like, well, shit. She cried on us. Cody, who's a little bit like, he's the person that sort of lives in the fantasy world. He decides that it was a spell that was cast by her tears. So they now need to get to Rose in order to make her cry, in order for these tears to, you know, change them back into their human form. And I mean, okay, it is a game. It can't be like too realistic, and obviously it isn't. But there is a moment there where that seems irrational to May, and Cody is absolutely convinced by it, which does seem like a very, very clear set difference that is, I think, a little bit forced. You can see that May is obviously the rational thinker, and it is really like crammed down like hard. Like you can see May is the rational one that tries to rationalize her way out of becoming literally what was a lifeless piece of wood, while Cody is absolutely convinced with his fantasy idea of like, of course it's tears that turn me into a doll, it's tears of whatever kind that's going to turn me back into a human being. That's the idea, right? Behind the two characters. The super rational May that's really busy, doesn't have any time, and the living in their world, living in his own world, kind of irresponsible Cody. And this is a setup for the characters, as well as setup for the story, because now they believe they need to get to Rose in order to make her cry. And then we move on to second chapter, which is chapter in the tree. They move from the shed to the tree, where they are locked up at first by squirrels that are fighting against wasps. And this is, I think, where I have the first issue with the story, and it's actually the same issue that I'm gonna have with the story overall, with like all the other chapters. And the issue is, quite simply, as I was saying about the video games and the stories, sometimes you go too video gamey. You can go, in a video game, you can go too focused on a story and the gameplay becomes stale. But here, like, you want to have a battle between squirrels and wasps, and there is like no reason for it, right? Like, you have these cool visuals of these squirrels that are basically soldiers, and you have these massive like you know, beautiful bee nests and like bees and these cool like boss battles against this massive wasp, like robotic wasp. And that is the main issue of It Takes Two, I feel like. If I had to summarize it like in one sentence, sometimes it prioritizes gameplay over story too much. Because you always have to kind of, I feel like, prioritize gameplay over story a little bit, because it is a video game. You're making a video game, not a TV show. But you have to do it, you have to like achieve a balance where the story still isn't like trodden upon, only to make cool visuals. And here in this chapter, I feel it happened. And it doesn't happen often, it doesn't happen too much in this game. That's why I enjoyed it. I genuinely enjoyed it. I'll talk about that obviously at the end as well. But here is the issue, right? So they are captured by the squirrels, and the squirrels, for some unknown reason, are fighting the wasps, and they want May and Cody to go there, because as dolls they cannot die. That's part of their curse, or rather a blessing in disguise in that sense. So they're sending them to fight against the wasps. And there's this side story of like one of the squirrel spies that was spying on the wasps, constructing a mechanical wasp that is supposed to be like a wasp queen. and that this wasp queen is then supposed to like redirect all of the wasps like elsewhere, and this mechanical wasp was like controlled by a squirrel spy that decided to go rogue because he had so much power and just became the leader of the wasps and fought against like his fellow squirrels. And I mean, okay, that's fine, but this seems like a contained minigame story that is like detracting from the main storyline. So that's the issue that I had with that. There is also another thing that's going on in the background that starts like throughout this chapter, and that's like Rose trying to connect to their trying their parents to reconnect in the real world. So you have this gameplay going on, and then sometimes there are edits back to the real world where Rose is sitting around and talking to their parents, and their parents are in some in a state, it seems like in a trance. It looks sort of like they're sleeping, but at the same time they seem like they're knocked out, because obviously their souls are now in these dolls. And she's trying to talk to them like, oh mom, like could look at this homework or whatever. I don't really remember what exactly it was. But like she was like, Rose is showing May that's sleeping, for example, some music or some pictures or something like that, and she obviously doesn't react because she's in a trance. And these sequences are, I think, important to like remind the game, like to remind the players why they're doing it, because there are these two layers, as I said. There's this doll universe and there's this real universe, and I feel like one of the reasons why the developers did these little cutscenes is to remind the players that they're playing for something like really important and real. Because the doll world, with like there are lots of gags and stuff, you can't really die. It's more like puzzle solving and stuff like that. And there are these like funny moments, and it's like good times. I feel like if they didn't have these scenes, these cutscenes occasionally pop in there, you would kind of forget that you are actually trying to achieve something like really important. So at first I was kind of looking at these cutscenes like, why are we doing this? Like, why are you showing me this? But upon further inspection, I kind of understand that you need to detract from this fun-loving world in order to show the gravity of the actual situation of what's going on. And at the same time, as an added bonus, the game also wanted you to know that Rose didn't bind their parents into the dolls intentionally. Like Rose clearly doesn't know what's going on, and some people might, like, without these cutscenes, some people might interpret it as like Rose knowingly trapping their parents in dolls, which I think would give some people pause and perhaps have different interpretations on the story as well. But that is it for chapter 2. By the way, these chapters, it isn't sorted in these chapters in the actual game, right? You're not playing like chapter 2 this, chapter 3 this. I just needed to separate this. I wanted to separate these based on the story. Like I wanted to separate the entire story based on the environment where it takes place. And as I was saying, the playthrough that I reviewed this game on was the playthrough of Hafu and Disguised Toast on Hafu's YouTube channel, and this is how they separated it, and I think it made sense because every single chapter takes place in a different environment. That's how the separation came about, by the way. That's why I'm just saying chapter 3 this, chapter 2 that. It does have a point. It's not just, that I'm literally just okay. By the way, if you have any anything else to add or anything like that, this is supposed to be like a discussion. So if any of you want to add something or ask me something, any idea, I did like loads of research or everything, so I'll try to discuss, debate, answer any questions or anything like that. Okay, then we move on to Rose's room. As they make it past the tree, Um, like I can tell you how the side quest ends, but I think that it doesn't really have any bearing. So just like really quickly, they manage to defeat the mechanical wasp, and then the other squirrels kind of turn on them, and Cody and May, Doll, Cody and May have to jump into like a makeshift aeroplane, which is made from Cody's, like real Cody's trunks, and fly away, and they fly into the window of Rose's room, which is where the next chapter takes place. And at first, like the first thing that happens pretty much is they get arrested by this monkey, which is like a plushie monkey, like a plushie toy of Rose that is like sort of charged to protect her. And the reason why it arrests them, or stops them rather, is because they promised, or the monkey overheard them saying that they need to make Rose cry, which obviously the monkey interpreted in a way that they want to, hurt her. Obviously, make her cry isn't a nice thing to happen, or to like a person that you're charged to protect in your mind. So he arrests them, he stops them, he puts them into like a space world, and essentially like they have to go through this whole space level in order to escape this prison. And I mean, like here, I mean, similarly to Love, Death, Robots, as we discussed before, there is the conflict between what is actually like really important visually to show, and like what is cool visually, and also what is important in the story. And I felt like the space sequence, the whole space level, was kind of like really long. Like it was really gamey, it felt like. There was so many like levels you needed to like lights on like different doorways, and you could only light those lights by finishing that level. It was like super video gamey, so I won't talk about it too much because I want to discuss the story rather than the gameplay. I don't consider myself a video game reviewer, but essentially, rather prolonged space sequence. What happens is that they escape, and they have this they have this showdown with a monkey, and then for some reason there's also this scene where they promise the monkey not to make Rose cry, even though that's very much still their intention, and the monkey never appears again. Then they follow on forward into Rose's room, and they decided the best plan to make her cry is to break her favorite toy, which is a toy elephant. And now we move into the most brutal section of this entire story, which is quite shocking and quite worthy of discussion. So another sort of environment they go through is her room, and as you can see on the left, hanging from the cupboard is like a toy castle, and they go through that castle. This is actually still the space level. Here you can see like really video gamey. Here you can see the castle, and this they just go around. They have to beat like the guards and stuff like that, and it's like cool kind of medieval style fighting. And then they just travel around on these trains, and they finally find their way all the way to the elephant. The elephant is called Cutie, and her thing is that she's really like cute and nice and like really loving, right? So she's accepting to everyone and whatever, really wholesome and stuff. But they do need to kill her. So there's this really dragged out sequence of them basically chasing her down. She's not fighting back, she's trying to escape. And, she tries to escape in a rocket. May sort of shoots her down by throwing a coin at her, and she falls down into this, what do you call this? This pit that you usually have at carnivals with this like metal hook that you can control. With this lever, and this hook would go down, grab something, and take it up, and deliver it somewhere. You know what I mean. this thing, right? So she falls into that, and you know, part of the game is also to grab her out. So you literally take her by the head and then take her, you know, down and plop her down, but she gets stuck. So you know, they're trying to drag her down. They rip open like her legs. Then they are trying to drag her over the edge of the castle because they're high up on the cupboard, and you know, she's holding on, and they are literally like pushing her down with like their legs and stuff like that. Like more of her body gets ripped out, her ear gets ripped out. It's fucking insane. Like, it is so brutal, and this game is like really geared. Like there are these two layers, right? There's this layers of actual real drama where the parents are breaking up, and it's really like touching, or rather divorcing, I should say. And it's really like touching, and at the same time really dramatic, and it's sad. Like, you can see the child crying. Like, literally, there's nothing like funny about it. You know, there's no like light portion of that. And then you have this like completely light-hearted and everything world where, yes, they are arguing still, but at the same time, like, everything is a bit more funny. You know, they have like these exaggerated physical features on those dolls. You know, like this Cody, for example, is like fat and has like comically large forearms like Popeye. And then suddenly, like, you have this scene where they literally murder the elephant, and I had to like think for a while after the episode, like, why did they do that? Because it seems so out of place, until I figured that, you know, they meant to, I think, to have it out of place. And I think it does provide, because on a gameplay level, I had to Google it. The thing you try to explain is called the crane machine. Yeah, toy cranes. Yeah, toy crane, claw machine. That's how I usually know it. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, now I feel more educated. But yes, essentially, what I think this was, since it didn't make much sense in the gameplay like sense of things, I think it was more meant for the story. And I think it meant to show like the misguidedness of the parents, their lack of understanding of what is actually going on, right? Because the way they're trying to do things is like find the easiest and best way to make their life simple. And that is both to make Rose cry in order to hopefully change back into their real bodies, and in the real world to divorce. And I think that's the interpretation they were going for. Obviously, I have, again, no evidence for that. I try to do my own interpretations of things, but that's sort of how I saw it. Like, as the same, because it felt the only thing that was emotionally as powerful as literally killing a helpless plushy toy is them divorcing and their child crying. And by connecting these things, I feel like they are actually connected on the narrative level as well. So you have the elephant dying and like being killed by these parents, and this act is so misguided and so wrong in the end, because killing the elephant and making Rose cry does not change them back into the body, back into their real life body. That not only is it wrong, but it's also wrong on like the moral level, right? So at the same time, it's damaging to everyone around, just like the divorce, and it isn't the right thing to do, just like supposedly, according to the game, like the divorce, which is another thing that we will want to talk about at the end. What is the messaging behind the divorce? Is divorce a right thing or a wrong thing? Or what about in this situation? We will talk about that later as well. But I feel like that's the interpretation I have for the elephant killing, for the elephant murder. If you have a different interpretation, then tell me. I'm really curious. Or what do you think about my interpretation as well? Either way, as I sort of alluded to, they run as the elephant falls down. They run to Rose's bed, and they they hope that she will like cry on them. Isn't it quite moralizing? What do you mean moralizing, Cardamon? Are you talking about like my interpretation? That it's like about the morality of divorce, or do you think that the game is moralizing by like making or trying to make out that divorce is wrong, is always wrong? Because if you mean that, then yeah, I kind of agree. It is kind of moralizing, like the overall approach, as in divorce is bad and can lead to no good. Yes, that's that's what I thought you meant. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. The game is definitely moralizing in that way, and we will talk about it more later. But I wanted to yeah, I wanted to let you know that that's exactly what I think as well. Obviously the game is built around two parents divorcing, and the base assumption of the game is that that can't happen because it will hurt everyone around, so let's stop that. And that's sort of your mission in the game. You don't really get a choice. But anyway, they run down, they try to get tears from their crying daughter, from Rose, but it doesn't work, so they're obviously a bit disappointed. But then they find a note that starts with a sentence, "I'm sorry I did this to you," and then it continues. The parents obviously seeing, oh my god, this is the letter. Rose is admitting that she did this to us. The letter obviously states like what we can do to reverse it. But then the book, Dr. Hakim, the cringy Mexican book, swoops in, tears up the letter, and is super cringy. And the parents are obviously like, what the fuck is this? What are you doing? And the book, he doesn't say it explicitly, but what he what he's kind of like subtly implying is, you didn't learn anything, let me, come with me. And suddenly they're transported into the book's realm. And the book's realm is straight out, no subtlety, couples therapy, right? It's literally couples therapy. Do I have it here somewhere? No, I don't. Okay, let's not skip further. Again, like the images weren't easy to find. And what I think about the couples therapy, right? So first of all, it's always cutscenes. When we are in Dr. Hakim's couples therapy, there isn't any gameplay. It's just cutscenes. So it's literally only to further the story along. And they sit in these couples therapy this couples therapy couch, except they're restrained in order not to escape. And Dr. Hakim is in front of them, and has this board where he talks about whatever therapy, right? And I wondered why they did that. The first idea is maybe to make the story flow more naturally, or rather than naturally, to focus on different story like plot points. Because one of the things that happens in these therapy kind of levels is that the gameplay is now inevitably completely connected to the story, because the story literally dictates the gameplay, as I will say later on. And now the goals are sort of connected together, right? Because the parents want to become real again, and the book wants the parents to come closer together, or rather like stop their divorce proceedings. And it has this opportunity to create sort of levels and worlds for them to complete missions that they can only complete through maximum cooperation and using their special abilities. That's something that I didn't mention on purpose before, because I feel like it didn't have any bearing on the story until now. But essentially the book now can design the places, design the levels based on what literally their problem with the other person is. So like this is pretty much couples therapy now. And they start with time. Anyway, Dr. Hakim says, like, you know, what's your main issue or whatever, like what is the problem? And Cody is the first to play along, sort of. He says that May is never at home. May counters, you know, I work for both of us. May is the breadwinner in the family. And May complains that Cody has no sense of time and thinks that time is limitless. And it's always important, these first like sort of quips in the beginning, just like in regular couples therapy, because it's these first thoughts that come into your head without like filtering them, that are usually the unadulterated opinions of the other person. And what happens here is that the book hears this and says, okay, so you, Cody, think that time is limitless, and you may like wish you could be in two places at once, and decides, okay, this is about time. And this like first few minutes of couples therapy, or of the first session sort of couples therapy, is what dictates the entirety of the next chapter. So see how we talked about like how this makes it more concise and make more sense, or rather be able to describe narratively what, or rather play in the same vein as the story goes. This is exactly what I meant. So it's about time, so they get transported into a broken cuckoo clock. May complained that, you know, I can't be in two places at once, I can't be at work and at home. So what she can do is sort of clone herself. That's her special ability that's now tied into the gameplay mechanics. So in the gameplay mechanics, if you play as May, you can stand somewhere and then, you know, press a button, whatever, run away, and then teleport to that person, to that place where you stood and press that button. And since Cody thought he was limitless, he can turn back time, forward or backwards, or stop it, so he can control time. So time is literally limitless for him. So these special abilities are now tied exactly with the perception of the other person that they have towards, you know, that first person. And that is, I think, why Gus said that this game is pretty much like a couples therapy, because it does sound like the kind of therapeutical games that psychologists would use in couples therapy or family therapy in general. By the way, for a little bit of context, I used to study psychology in like a pre-university course and then at university. Not for long. I decided I wanted to write rather than study psychology, but I was really into psychology, and in these 3 years it kind of like I really focused on studying psychology as well. So to me it does seem like very psychological as well, like very like therapy kind of motivated. But what I like about it so much is that it does exactly what the best story-driven video games do, and that is to tie the gameplay firmly into the story. That is, I think, very important. But anyway, these special abilities are what's important, and they're in this Kaku clock. Nice, I'm learning a lot about you on this stream. Well, you know, every time you watch a person for long enough, I guess they will tell you their eventually they will tell you their whole life story. I'm looking forward to you starting streaming, Anna. I'll be your I'll be one of your first followers for sure. But anyway, they are in this cuckoo clock, and their like side mission in this cuckoo clock is to connect these two rails that are going parallel to each other. I appreciate that. No worries. I appreciate you being here and talking to me. I appreciate that a lot, actually. Anyway, so this story is about this whole chapter is about them being in the cuckoo clock, and they have to clear debris and open doors in order for these two tracks to connect, or rather these two like figures of them to connect on these tracks that seem parallel, but apparently connect to each other at some point. So, you know, they have to turn back time to clear debris, they have to open doors using their special abilities and stuff like that. And eventually these two tracks combine, and you slowly through this couples therapy start seeing them argue less and less, because obviously they are at each other's throats, they're blaming the other person for loads of things. But as the couples therapy goes on, it, you know, works. It has to work. It's, the story is about, you know, this coming together essentially. And, you know, from time to time there are these moments where they are like reconnecting, but more than once the cringy, and here you can see him in his full terrifying beauty, more than once the book actually interrupts them. And at first I thought that maybe, you know, they're just doing that for like a cheap, like funny moment, I guess, haha, for the book to just be annoying. But maybe I'm thinking too deep into this. Like, it does have, it is kind of like a little bit like a childish narrative. But maybe what the book is actually doing, because in the end he does seem smarter than he appears throughout. Maybe what he's doing is kind of separating this initial attraction in order to build something better. Perhaps. Maybe, I don't know, but that's sort of like my thinking behind it. Like maybe I'm thinking about it, but maybe, Jesus Christ, maybe I'm thinking about it a bit too much. But anyway, he interrupts them and brings them back into the therapy session.